There is an enigma that has spanned centuries and still sparks questions to this day. Who was Abraham really? Recognized as the central patriarch of the Israelite people and several Arab nations, his origin remains shrouded in mystery and uncertainty. If Abraham was not an Israelite, after all, Israel did not exist yet, and he was not Jewish either, what exactly was he? Could he then be considered Hebrew? The term Hebrew refers to those who crossed the Great River, alluding to migration from ancient Mesopotamia. But is this explanation enough to understand his true identity? The big question that few dare to investigate is, where exactly did Abraham come from? What was his homeland, his culture, his true origin? In this video, we will dive into this ancient mystery, exploring historical documents, sacred texts, and archaeological evidence to uncover the truth behind the figure of Abraham. Get ready for a fascinating journey, the mystery of which people Abraham belonged to. Abraham is undoubtedly one of the most enigmatic figures in ancient history. Known as the supreme patriarch of the Abrahamic peoples, he left a legacy that resonates through the centuries, influencing not only Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, but also a vast network of lineages that few dare to explore. Traditional records tell us that Abraham was the direct ancestor of the Israelites through his son Isaac, and the Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael, who later gave rise to the 12 Arab tribes. But what many overlook is that his descendants were even more extensive, encompassing other groups whose histories have gradually been relegated to the shadows. Among them, we find the Edomites, also called Edomeans, whose royal blood also flowed through Abraham's veins. Furthermore, there is a connection often forgotten with the Midianites, a mysterious people whose role in antiquity still raises many questions. This branch of Abraham's descendants came through his son, Midian, a name rarely given the attention it deserves in traditional accounts. But there is an even more surprising detail in this story. While most believe that Abraham had only two sons, Isaac and Ishmael, ancient records indicate that he was actually the father of at least 8 sons. And here lies one of the most overlooked aspects. After Isaac, Abraham married a woman named Keturah, whose name translated from Aramaic means promised. Who was Keturah? Evidence suggests she may have been of Hebrew or Aramaic origin, a woman of crucial importance in the continuation of Abraham's legacy. Abraham's impressive lineage extended through generations, leaving a deep mark on the history of ancient peoples. With Keturah, his second wife, Abraham had 6 more children, including Midian, whose name would echo through the centuries. But his descendants did not stop there. Through Ishmael, the firstborn he had with Hagar, Abraham became the grandfather of 13 grandchildren, each leaving their mark on the world. In order of birth, they were Nebaioth, Kedar, Abdul, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Timur, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. Among them was Maalath, also called Basemoth, who would later become one of Esau's wives, weaving unexpected ties between distinct lineages. On the other hand, Isaac's descendants, the son of promise, followed an equally notable path. As a grandfather, Abraham witnessed the birth of twins, Esau and Jacob, whose destinies diverged drastically. Just like Ishmael, Jacob also expanded the patriarch's family tree, having 13 children who would later form the 12 tribes of Israel. Among them were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And among the few women mentioned in the genealogy was Dinah, his only daughter mentioned in the scriptures. Esau in turn forged his own path and had children who perpetuated his lineage: Eliphaz, Reuel, Jush, Korah, and Jalam. Their descendants shaped territories and nations, leaving a legacy that would echo in the history of the peoples of the Middle East. Abraham's complex family tree not only expanded in numbers but also in influence. Each branch of this lineage gave rise to peoples who would play crucial roles in history, demonstrating that the promise made to him that he would be the father of many nations was fulfilled in an impressive way. The descendants of Yokshan, Abraham's son, played a key role in the formation of the tribes that populated the Levant. Among them are Sheba and Dedan, as well as the sons of Midian, Ephah, Abida, Eldah, and Hanok. These lineages gave rise to peoples who settled in the vast region that today corresponds to Jordan, parts of Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and other neighboring territories. In recent times, Abraham's origin has been the subject of debate and questioning. Due to a lack of deeper historical knowledge, many still identify him as the Hebrew or even the Jew. However, this classification does not correspond to historical facts. Abraham was neither a Jew nor even a Hebrew in the ethnic sense we know today. The title Hebrew was attributed to him because of his migration when he crossed the Great River coming from the lands of ancient Mesopotamia. The word Hebrew originates from the term Ivri, which means one who crosses or the traveler. This name directly refers to Abraham's journey when he crossed the mighty Tigris and Euphrates rivers, leaving the city of Ur in search of the Promised Land. During his passage through Egypt, Abraham was identified by the Egyptians as a Hyksos. This term, although often misunderstood, did not refer to a specific people, but rather a broader category of foreign inhabitants who settled in Egypt without being natives. The Hyksos were mostly Semitic peoples from the pastoral lands of the East, encompassing Aramean, Akkadian, Assyrian tribes, and other groups from the Levant and Mesopotamia. The name Hyksos has roots in the Greek language, but its origin lies in ancient Egyptian, where it was expressed as Heka Kasiwet, which can be translated as rulers of foreign lands or foreign kings. This designation reflected the status of these peoples as leaders of migrant communities, often assuming positions of influence within Egyptian society. According to the accounts in the book of Genesis, Abraham, along with his father Terah, departed from Ur of the Chaldeans in present-day southern Iraq, heading toward the land of Canaan. However, before reaching their final destination, he and his family temporarily settled in Paddan Aram, a region located in present-day Syria. It was only after this stay that Abraham proceeded to Egypt, where his presence was recorded within the context of these Semitic migrations. Given this scenario, it is highly likely that the Egyptians viewed Abraham as a Hyksos, associating him with the groups of foreigners from the Middle East who, over the centuries, settled in Egypt. To the Egyptians of the time, he was not just a traveler, but part of a long tradition of migratory peoples who challenged borders and mingled with the great civilizations of the ancient world. Specifically, Abraham may have been identified within the subgroup of the Hyksos known as the Shasu. The Shasu were nomadic tribes from the Middle East, possibly from the area of present-day Iraq. Some researchers suggest that even in Ur of the Chaldeans, the Akkadians might have referred to him as Shutu, a term used to describe various Semitic peoples, including the Arameans. Moreover, there is a line of study suggesting that both in Egypt and Canaan, Abraham could have been called Habiru or Apiru. These designations appear in several ancient sources, especially in cuneiform texts from Mesopotamia and Egyptian inscriptions. Contrary to what one might think, the Habiru or its variations such as Habiru and Apiru did not represent a specific ethnic group. Instead, the term was used to classify a social layer composed of migrants, outsiders, and in many cases, people on the margins of traditional power structures. These were groups who often lived outside the conventions of established society, frequently acting as itinerant workers, mercenaries, or even small clan leaders. In this context, it is possible that Abraham, in his migration from Ur to Canaan and later to Egypt, was identified in different ways depending on the peoples he encountered. Depending on the perspective, he could have been seen as a Shasu, a Shutu, or a Habiru, terms that in some way carry the same essential meaning. A foreigner from the East, a rootless traveler, a clan leader crossing lands and borders. The Habiru are mentioned in various inscriptions from the 2nd millennium BCE, appearing in different contexts and often marginalized within the societies where they were found. Ancient accounts describe them as manual laborers, mercenaries, and even outlaws or rebels, frequently living on the fringes of established social structures. However, it is crucial to understand that the term Habiru did not refer to a single ethnic or cultural group, but rather to a broad and fluid social category composed of individuals and clans who for various reasons were outside the dominant order. Some theories suggest that the Habiru may have played a significant role in the large migrations and conflicts that marked the end of the 2nd millennium BCE. Their name appears in ancient texts that, for some scholars, have intriguing parallels with biblical accounts. Although there is no consensus regarding a possible connection between the Habiru and figures or events in the Bible, the similarity between historical references and sacred writings remains a topic of intense academic debate. The difficulty in precisely defining who the Habiru were is largely due to the vague nature of the term and the scarcity of direct evidence. What is known is that Sumerians, Egyptians, Akkadians, Hittites, and Canaanites, including the Ugaritic people, used this designation to describe certain nomadic or foreign social groups. Despite this, it is essential to distinguish the Habiru from the Hebrews. While Hebrew means one who crossed the river, a reference to the Mesopotamian origin of Abraham and his journey, Habiru had a more pejorative meaning, potentially interpreted as outlaws, slaves, archers, mercenaries, or immigrant workers. The history of the Habiru remains a mystery shrouded in fragments of evidence, but their presence and influence are undeniable. They appear as peripheral figures, but at the same time, active agents of the transformations that shaped the ancient Near East. The term Habiru or Apiru was initially identified in Akkadian texts and later found in Ugaritic inscriptions. In Egyptian writing, its closest equivalent seems to be trad-u, traditionally pronounced as Apiru, where the u functions as a plural suffix characteristic of Egyptian. According to known phonetic transformations in Northwest Semitic languages, the root of this term may be linked to a word meaning dust or dirt. Thus, Habiru could carry the sense of being dusty or dirty, a term often used to designate nomads and wandering groups. Although this interpretation could also extend to the general concept of nomad in the Egyptian context, it is more appropriate to say that Abraham was recognized as a Hyksos belonging to the Shasu subgroup. In his homeland Mesopotamia, the Akkadians might have known him as Shutu, a term associated with the Chaldean people. However, despite these multiple designations, Abraham's true identity was Hebrew. He was of Chaldean origin but became known as a Hebrew due to his migration to Canaan. The designation Hebrew itself emerged from the Canaanite recognition that he had crossed the Great River, leaving Mesopotamia to settle in new lands. This reference appears explicitly in chapter 14 of the book of Genesis, when a Canaanite man refers to Abraham as the Hebrew. Interestingly, the term Hebrew reappears later in the book of Exodus used by the Egyptians, or perhaps inserted by later copyists who used Phoenician writing. Some scholars argue that in this context, the word may have acquired a negative connotation used to describe the Hebrews as slaves. This theory is based on the fact that Habiru or Apiru already carried meanings linked to slaves, mercenaries, and immigrant workers in Canaanite societies. Thus, Abraham is recognized as a Hebrew from the Canaanite perspective, as the one who crossed the river into the land of Canaan. However, to the Egyptians, he was a Hyksos, a foreigner from the east. In his origin, Abraham belonged to the Chaldean people, a Semitic group descended from the line of Arphaxad as interpreted by ancient Semitic traditions. During his stay in the land of Aram, it is possible that Abraham adopted the Aramaic language, an aspect reflected in the subsequent generations. His grandson Jacob, for example, is called an Aramean, a title likely due to his mother Rebekah's Aramean ancestry. Thank you to all who have followed along. May God be with you and see you soon.